talking about ISIS and ISIS in Khorasan region, actually at great length, 10 minutes is not enough, but I'll try to give you some food for thought. You know, conflict in Afghanistan remains to be complex and of multiple dimensions. The emergence of ISIS in Afghanistan was an addition to that complexity and multiplicity. Following the emergence of ISIS in Afghanistan, which is known there, ISIS in Khorasan region, a discourse developed, especially in Afghanistan, Pakistan, the broader region, which was and still is a mixture of assumptions and facts. Assumptions actually led to an extent, some exaggerations. Definitely, ISIS or ISK is a growing dimension to the conflict in Afghanistan. That's one. It is a threat, given the profile, political, military, economic profile of Afghanistan. That's one. Second, activities of ISIS in Afghanistan indicates that conflict in Afghanistan is not an Afghan problem. It is regional and transnational. So within coming 10 minutes, I'll give you some information in my assessment about the structure of ISK in Afghanistan-Pakistan region, the symbolic significance of Afghanistan and ISIS caliphate narrative. Why Afghanistan? Other than the fact that it's a conflict zone, definitely the argument that conflict paves the way for terrorist groups to make inroads into that country or society. There is another relevance that Afghanistan has when it comes to ISIS narrative. And then I'll talk about this very much discussed difference of opinion or difference of ideology between Taliban and ISIS, which a lot of people talk about. And then the strategy of ISIS in Afghanistan, whether they were successful or they faced failure, and what was the state reaction. And in the end, I'll look into the future, how ISIS could develop itself. Will it remain a relevant factor in future or not? When it comes to structure, ISIS emerged in January 2015. Most of the leadership, they have a council of leadership of ISIS in Khorasan, is actually formed by the former key commanders of TTP. TTP is a Pakistani Taliban group, Taliban Pakistan. Even now, most of the leaders of ISIS in Afghanistan are Pakistanis, Taliban. And the rank and file, if we see, compared to local or indigenous Taliban, it's more foreigners than Afghans. So, ISIS in Afghanistan is one, a transnational phenomenon. Second, it's a foreign phenomenon. One thing that's big about ISIS in Afghanistan and ISIS in the Middle East is the link, whether these two groups have link or not. The Afghan government has been working on it. But so far, we don't have a clear picture. When it comes to ideology, definitely, there is a link. ISIS in the Middle East announced Khorasan region. ISIS in the Middle East recognized the leadership council of ISIS in Khorasan, and its leader, Hafiz Saeed, who is, as I said, a Pakistan Taliban. But when it comes to finance, it's not clear whether ISIS in Afghanistan is receiving financial aid from ISIS in the Middle East or not. Our assessment is that ISIS in Afghanistan has faced some financial difficulties. Our interactions with locals in the areas where ISIS has been operating indicates that ISIS tried to engage itself in timber smuggling from Kunar province, which is on the border with Pakistan, into Pakistan. That indicates that they have some financial issues, and that counters the argument that ISIS is very rich. I'm talking about ISIS in Afghanistan, definitely in Iraq and Syria, that's another picture. But I think ISIS in Afghanistan has financial issues, and that tells that there is a weak financial link between the two groups. Symbolic significance of Afghanistan, you may all know, when it comes to history, Afghanistan comes at the center of ISIS Khilafah narrative. You heard of this emergence of forces of Black Turban all the way from Khorasan region coming to the Middle East and liberating the Muslim world. So that's very important to ISIS. And that makes Afghanistan in the broader region, because Khorasan is, today's Afghanistan is the center of Khorasan. It includes Central Asia, Sinkian region, parts of Pakistan, and Iran, which is known as Greater Khorasan. So that tells that ISIS will definitely try to continue its operations in that region. Of course, another factor is that Afghanistan is a conflict zone. The Afghan government is weak politically, militarily, economically. So it's a conducive environment for this group to make inroads and build footprints and continue. Another important factor is that Central Asian militants in Afghanistan actually dragged ISIS into Afghanistan. That's very important. Why? Reason number one, Taliban have been very vocal about their campaign, saying that their campaign is national. They don't have any agenda beyond Afghanistan borders. This is, of course, what the Central Asian militants like IMU, Islamic Movement of Uzbekistan, like ATIM, Eastern Turkestan Movement of Islamic Movement of Eastern Turkestan, and IGU, these groups do not want, because they need a group which has transnational agenda. For your information, ATIM changed its name to ATIP sometime back. Eastern Turkestan Islamic Movement, assessing the name, is only focused on Sinkian region. But when we talk about Turkestan Islamic Movement, there is a difference between Eastern Turkestan and Turkestan. Turkestan is a broader region. That also indicates the inclination of ATIM, Islamic Movement of Uzbekistan, towards ISIS Caliphate narrative. So they dragged in ISIS into Afghanistan by pledging allegiance, by supporting Caliphate. And this sort of created a chasm between Taliban. I will talk about it later. So these are the reasons why Afghanistan is significant. Difference between Taliban and ISIS. The international discourse has been so much focused on this religious schools of thoughts, which my assessment is not that relevant. For example, Taliban are Hanafi schools of thought, or they are Deobandis, and ISIS or Salafis. I don't think that was a major reason for animosity between Taliban and ISIS in Afghanistan. Because Taliban actually told ISIS, you are welcome, you come and fight, you operate, but it should be under our leadership. I think the major reason for fraction was the struggle for power, the supremacy, the leadership. And that created chasm. And overall, if we see the difference or this divide between Hanafi school of thought and Salafi across the world is fading away. There are growing elements of Salafi within Taliban. Then look at the argument of Al-Qaeda, so I cannot go into details because of time. What was ISIS' strategy? When ISIS emerged in 2005-15, it started operating in different pockets of the country. Wanted to repeat what ISIS in the Middle East did, but it faced problems. Confrontation by Taliban, airstrikes by US, operations by the Afghan government. It failed in several provinces. Now, the current strategy of ISIS is to centralize its focus in one area and then try to expand gradually. Now, foreign elements in Afghanistan who are affiliated to ISIS are trying to go to eastern Afghanistan provinces like Nangarhar and Kunar. These are very important provinces. Airstrikes were very effective against ISIS in Afghanistan, and these are mountainous provinces which actually can affect airstrikes and all that thing. State response. Afghanistan always said very clear, transnational phenomena, threat not only to Afghanistan, to the entire region, and Afghanistan is fighting a war on behalf of other stakeholders. Pakistan sort of remained, okay, ISIS is there, it's not a threat, denial, and there are reasons, because the argument that, and this is true, this is a correct argument, that Taliban is a stronger threat in Afghanistan than ISIS for the time being. Iran was very vocal against it. It even called Afghanistan, if you cannot fight, we will undertake certain measures. Iran actually reached out to Taliban, elements within Taliban. Russia, you heard, but with some exaggerations when it comes to Russia. China looks at, China actually looks at Afghanistan from the presence of Khorasan. That's very important. China does not really think that Taliban is a threat to them in Afghanistan. It's ISIS. But in the meantime, think that when Taliban are there, ISIS cannot be a relevant threat. Looking into the future, terrorism is a system. It works for a system. Taliban relatively are negotiable. They have conditions. Foreign forces withdrawal, Islamic Emirate, but ISIS is not negotiable. There is no idea of negotiation when it comes to ISIS. So based on, you know, if you look at these three, intent, capacity, and opportunity for a terrorist group, Afghanistan is a conducive environment for ISIS to grow. And in the meantime, ISIS could be a source of competition by regional actors rather than cooperation in favor of the Afghan government. Russia is reaching out to Taliban, Iran's links with Taliban, China's thinking of Taliban not as a threat, actually is not something good in future in case of Afghanistan. So there has been fragmented response to ISIS in Afghanistan. While ISIS remains a threat, and if there is a fragmented response, the best way to deal with this is a strong, united, militarily strong Afghan government. So if that is not, undermined, I think Afghanistan gradually, I wouldn't say for certain, but there is potential. It could change into victims of different conflicts. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. I have difficulty in deciding what I can say in 10 minutes about that, because this is a lengthy subject. So I finally decided to give you some insights into how Daesh came about and also some my take on how we can actually tackle Daesh. And this comes from a lengthy lecture that I gave a couple months ago in a conference in Spain, actually. So, for the sake of saving time, I'll just go into the subject immediately before, and I would say, of course, the shocking events of Mosul in June of 2014, Daesh did not attract much attention. And I would encourage all of us to use Daesh as a name for ISIS. That is the Arabic acronym that they hate, so let's call them with, give them the name that they actually hate, they don't like. It's the Arabic acronym, but if they don't like it. And despite so much media coverage, there are still some ambiguity at both the popular and the elitist even levels. Because some people link Daesh to Iran, some link it to the United States. Some even say that Baghdadi, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, is a Mossad agent. So that kind of ambiguity does exist around Daesh. There was also a state of denial for the political, cultural, social, and economic context, and insistence that Daesh is alien. However, there's need for a moment of truth, I would say, to acknowledge that this is more internal than external. And I will tell you that a Jordanian called Abu Mus'ab Zarqawi, I have something in common with him, by the way. I'm also Abu Mus'ab, but I'm not Mus'ab Sufan. Because my actual son is, my son's name is Mus'ab, but that was his nickname. So Abu Mus'ab Zarqawi actually established Daesh in 2003. And he's the actual godfather of Daesh. Two factors helped him by creating the right environment to recruit and get a social Sunni incubator. He also exploited the Sunni political vacuum and managed to attract many Arabs and foreigners coming from outside. And these were post-occupation US policies. You cannot talk about Daesh and how to go about without understanding some of the decisions that were made after the occupation and then the destruction of Iraq in 2003. There's also the Iranian expansion over Shia politics in Iraq. Countries of the region also, at that time, feared the US agenda because the US was talking about the neocons in the US, the neoconservatives were talking about changing the region through democratization. And of course, one of the main reasons that President Bush talked about for going in Iraq was promoting democracy, if we can recall correctly. Therefore, regimes did not really worry about checking volunteers, which ultimately turned Iraq into a new Al-Qaeda hub and a source of affiliated cells in the region of Europe. So Daesh was not a coincidence. It was a result of an accumulative process from 2003 to 2014, encompassing several factors. And I would like to emphasize this. The US occupation and the expansion of Iranian influence and Shia domination, Zarqawi's distinctly differing ideological vision from Al-Qaeda. By the way, the main difference between Zarqawi and Osama bin Laden was which enemy should we give priority to. Osama bin Laden gave priority to the distant enemy, that's the United States. And Zarqawi came and said, no, we have to give priority to the close enemy, that is the infidels of the region. Of course, there's also Sunni fear of alienation and marginalization and the political vacuum with no inclusive Iraqi project at the time. So like I said, Al-Zarqawi, Abu Mus'ab al-Zarqawi was the godfather of Daesh. To give you an idea about who Al-Zarqawi was, he was a Jordanian. He went to Afghanistan in 1989. And he moved from Peshawar to Khost. He returned to Jordan in 1993 and he was imprisoned in 1994. Then he was released in a pardon in 1999. But at that time, he had already imposed himself as a strong leader and attracted many followers. He returned to Afghanistan after he was released from prison. He managed to establish a strong network and began to weave a global jihadist network after 9/11. He moved with his followers to Iraq through Iran, by the way, when he moved back to Iraq. Because prior to 2006 or the occupation of Iraq, there was no Al-Qaeda in Iraq, even though there were claims that one of the reasons was for the war was to target Al-Qaeda. But there was no proof of any Al-Qaeda presence in Iraq then. In 2004, he pledged allegiance to Osama bin Laden. But his ideology, like I said, differed from that of Osama bin Laden. Zarqawi managed to integrate the sectarian conflict into the heart of the ideological and political vision of his organization. He then made no distinction between a foreign enemy, that's the infidels, or an internal enemy, the apostates. That's the regimes and people of the region. So he targeted both of these. Coming to the idea of a state, Abu Mus'ab Zarqawi had it in his mind to establish the state, actually, before he died. He was planning to announce the Islamic State when he was killed in June of 2006. And this was a joint Jordanian-US operation, by the way. It was the Jordanian intelligence that actually got Abu Mus'ab Zarqawi. Then General Petraeus developed a new strategy, if you remember, which was based on a surge in the number of troops and then the Iraqi Sahwa, which fell, which was then after Al-Qaeda was driven out because of the Sahwat and the new strategy. The Sunnis in Iraq were betrayed because they were not integrated into the political life of the country. That's why, if you can't understand why the Sunnis in Iraq now are hesitant, or why they even sided with that, because they felt betrayed. They were not. They had no assurance that they would be integrated into the process. On April 19th, 2010, the two people who succeeded Abu Mus'ab Zarqawi after he was killed, who were Umar al-Baghdadi and Muhajir, were actually killed in a US operation. Then Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, Ibrahim Awad Berri, and Iraqi took charge and adopted a more ruthless tactics than Abu Mus'ab Zarqawi. So Iraq became under more Iranian influence then, with Prime Minister Malik when he was elected as Prime Minister in 2010. And the US was beginning to withdraw its troops from Iraq. The region also witnessed some major developments during that time. Of course, the Arab Spring started in late 2010. And bin Laden was killed in May of 2011. These were developments that made a difference for Daesh and its expansion. After Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi took over, he revised the strategy of Daesh. And I can tell you the principles, the three main principles that the new strategy was built around. These principles were, and I don't know if you've heard this before or not, 9 bullets against apostates and 1 bullet against the crusaders. So he was emphasizing targeting the close enemy. 9 bullets vis-a-vis 1 for the foreigners. Then there was the principle of cleansing, preventing Iraqi forces from establishing permanent bases where they wanted to have influence. Then there was a policy of targeting, which was targeting Iraqi military, police, and political leadership. This was the essence or the gist of the strategy after it was revised. So by 2012, the Islamic State in Iraq started to recover, benefiting from domestic and regional conditions, mainly Malik's mistakes, the expansion of Iranian influence, the escalating conflict in Syria, and the Arab Spring. Many experts view al-Maliki as a partner in the rise of the Islamic State. Al-Baghdadi announced the launch of this new plan in July of 2012. And later, his spokesman, Al-Adnani, explained the strategy. And for those who are interested, I can definitely go into a discussion afterwards on what that meant. Then Daesh actually started to expand. Many thought that the declaration of establishing the state then was just a propaganda, that it was proved that it was otherwise something else. The Daesh as a state has a very sophisticated structure about it. And I'll just point out what the main structure looks like. Of course, you have the Khalifa at the head of the state. You have the Shura Council. You have Ahl al-Hal wal-Aqd, that's the loosen and bind group. Then you have the Religious or Sharia Commission, the Media and Communication Department, hence the sophistication in using social media and propaganda. Bayt al-Mal, that's the Finance Department. They have a military council, and they have a security council. And lastly, they have the administrative divisions, which are the wilayat. I meant to talk about the Nusra Front, but I think we're limited in time. I'll just point out my take on how we can actually talk about countering organizations like that, because all the other organizations that we see now, Boko Haram, Shabab, and the organization in Sina, they're all offshoots of the same threat, basically. And we have to understand that. But I would say that eradicating terrorism will not succeed without identifying and addressing the root causes of its emergence and the motives of its adherence. Hence, eliminating terrorism is closely linked to solving the existing regional problems. And Joe, that pointed out that problems in the region are interconnected. And I don't think you can in any way divorce, for example, the Arab-Israeli conflict from being one of the sources of extremism and extreme ideology in the region. So we really have to talk about a holistic approach whereby we try to, and I'm not talking about getting all the problems in one go and trying to solve them in one go, no. I'm talking about prioritizing, looking holistically at the region and trying to sort these conflicts out, deal with them, end them, and then talk about development and prosperity of the region. Applying military solutions to solve cultural, political problems is unrealistic. This is what we've been doing. We have only been applying hard security solutions to problems that are not purely security problems. So we have to start talking about mid-term and long-term solutions that take us to political reforms, that take us to economic development and prosperity, that take us to social justice, how we can develop good governance and all of that. What is needed on top of military and hard security solutions are long-term political and socio-economic solutions. Stability and democratization, of course, are very essential. Just 30 seconds about the Jordanian perspective on extremism and terrorism. Jordan was one of the first countries to actually recognize the importance of developing a strategy to counter extremism. We worry about extremism more than terrorism because terrorism is a byproduct. It's a product of extremism. So we started devising a strategy back in 2003, actually, as I recall. And we were very mindful that the solutions were not military or security solutions. The solutions were primarily economic, social. So we started looking at this and developing solutions that can be called comprehensive. So it was a holistic approach. Of course, one of the main problems that we have in Jordan is the issue of resources. We know what the solutions are, but some of the solutions are yet to get enough resources to implement them as we see them. But I think we're moving forward, we're pressing, and to be honest, Jordan can be a role model for that. But we definitely count on our friends assistance when it comes to coming up with some of these resources that are required. I think I'll stop here, and if there are any questions, then we can expand.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'll be speaking about focusing on South Asia, and this is one of the most complicated regions in the world in terms of politics as well as socio-economic, cultural structures. So 10 minutes is not actually enough time to really get into the inside of South Asian political structures and the security structures. However, please bear with me. So this is basically a theater where you see a lot of security issues ranging from what I call statist paranoia to homegrown terrorism to political violence, and recently cricket violence too. So cricket has become more of a political sport these days, which is also determining our foreign relations. Now, why South Asia is very important when we talk about security? There are two major issues. One of the major issues is obviously radicalization that we are struggling with. Now, the whole idea of radicalization is not new to us. It's been there for ages, for centuries, and we have seen this is one of the reasons why we protested the colonial movement, why we protested the colonial regime, and of course, subsequently, we have seen that which was actually one unified bloc, India became two, India and Pakistan, and then subsequently we've seen India, Bangladesh, and Pakistan. So therefore, you have seen that the resistance, the culture of resistance has always been there. Now that gives you one of the main theoretical question for us, that is radicalization always a problem? No. But the new form that we are now seeing has a different sort of ingredients inside. That is called religion. And of course, we're now using religion in the name of politics as well as in the name of security. And what we have seen, my colleague Subhachandran was this morning asking a very important question, whether actually ISIS wants to come to South Asia, or is it the South Asian smaller extremist groups who wants to bring ISIS to South Asia? So this is one of the fundamental questions we're actually struggling. And this is also linked with the whole idea of radicalization that we discuss in Bangladesh, as well as in Pakistan, and as well as in India. Now, if you take South Asia, it is a region that is a house of almost like 2 billion people, and you have seen that at least 2 billion people has the least integrated region in the world. And if you take the trade as an example, we only get intra-regional trade in South Asia is less than 7% compared to any other part of the world. So you can also get some sort of idea that how fragmented our political relationships are. Now, given that, of course, if you see the economic growth of this region is quite phenomenal if you take the individual countries. Now, given that, the level of cooperation among these countries in terms of security is not at a satisfactory level. Now, why this radicalization has become important, given the economic growth, given our development process going on? One of the fundamental reasons is all of these countries are now pursuing some sort of policies within their country, which is making the state more militarized. Now, how do you think that is happening? If I take the case of Bangladesh, for example, whether we have the presence of ISIS or not is still being debated. Why? On one hand, the state is denying that there is no presence of ISIS in the country, but on the other hand, there are a lot of reportings that is suggesting that Bangladesh has become a conducive ground where ISIS can function. Now, this denial of state, as well as the non-found or essentially non-credible statements from the other sectors, for example, civil society or the opposition political parties, are creating another level of confusion, which is creating a deep pocket, deep vacuum, where actually if the state, neither the state nor the public at large is able to comprehend whether we actually have ISIS in the country or not. So this is what we are actually grappling with. Now, again, we have several phenomena going on. One is the political violence. If you take Pakistan as an example, if you take India as an example, if you take Bangladesh as an example, you always see there is this acute political crisis going on every time. Bangladesh is, of course, an example where you see that two major political parties are absolutely in regularly for a long, long time. Now, that's another problem. When you have the political violence going on, then obviously you have a third party who will always take advantage of that. Now again, we have to get into this crosstalk problem, whether the political violence are eventually being translated into religious violence or ideological violence, we do not know. Now essentially we always see in our discourse that political violence or the extremist violence are overlapping. Now, if that overlaps, gives you some kind of mixed reaction among the public to have less confidence on the political institutions. Now, when you have less confidence on the political institutions, you essentially try to figure out the alternative government system. Now, again, how do we create alternative government system? Now, on one hand, we have experimented with different political institutions, reforming political institutions, which has not been very successful. Therefore, we now have a lot of narratives coming up, which is more prone to religious ideologies. Does it mean that we are becoming radical? No, not yet. But when we think about bringing religious components into our political discourse, then we start to feel there is a sense of alienation in the multiple structures, different levels. One hand, you're actually alienating a secular political system, which a lot of people in any case endorses. Now that alienation creates a kind of a deep pocket within the society through which you create a deep political divide on the issue of whether we should carry on religion as the statist propaganda or should it be excluded from the political structure. So that's one. The second problem is obviously you have created a culture of impunity, or culture of corruption, or hence that is called culture of misgovernance in three of these countries, essentially, where you have actually are now excluding a mass people who feels alienated from the statist structure, which means now there is a huge tension going on between the individual or the citizens and the state. Why is that happening? Because people are not having access to resources. Therefore, since they don't have the access to resources, essentially the revolution comes in. Some sort of dissent comes in. So whether the ISIS actually will take advantage of that or not, we are not in a position to claim any specific answer to that. So for which we will require further research. Think about the political culture of including religion into spreading its springs within the society. Now let's take the case of Pakistan for example, where religion plays a very important role in the political decision making. It is increasingly becoming visible in India as well. Now we are also seeing recently in Bangladesh that whether we should keep Islam as the state religion in the constitution became a very debatable subject, which the Honorable High Court has actually kept in the constitution. So there you go. Now you are bringing the entire religion as a phenomenon in the overall different levels of structure of your society. Which means, now the new youth that you see is growing. Interestingly, if you take the demography of Bangladesh or Pakistan or India in that matter, you see a very interesting phenomenon. The number of youth is rising at a phenomenal scale. Almost like 1/5 of the population is now above 35, which means 4 out of 5 population is actually between 18 to 35. Now these are the people equipped with new technologies. These are the people equipped with mobile technologies. So they are actually thinking far ahead in the political institutions that we have. They are thinking far ahead than the state is thinking about its political existence. So therefore, the challenge is actually coming from the youth. Now when the youth starts to feel diseducated, starts to feel alienated and disfranchised with the existing political system, essentially some sort of dissent can be seen. And that dissent is often manipulated by the extremists. Now what is happening in Bangladesh as well as in Pakistan, I think that this strong presence of online radicalization is creating another problem. Why? Now you see that we have, in fact, over the past 5 years, made a phenomenal progress in terms of ICT, and that progress is almost 200%. Now you see in Bangladesh almost like 31.9% people are regularly connected to internet, 30% in India and 14.6% in Pakistan. That's a 2015 data, and that shows that people are increasingly becoming connected to online stuff, which means the youth who are not capable to understand extremist narratives are more likely to be connected to online radical extremist groups. So therefore, you really don't need ISIS to come to Bangladesh or India or Pakistan. Perhaps you can always see that you can make a relationship with ISIS sitting in Dhaka or Mumbai or perhaps in Karachi. So I would have gone for another 20 minutes, but General Farghal has made his security threat to me. So therefore,
I'm looking for
so General Farghal's radical body gesture is essentially giving me an indication that I should wrap up. However, just 30 seconds, General Farghal, before I get beheaded by you. But this is the final comment that I wanted to make. Now, what we are doing in these countries is essentially what we need is like a concentrated or concrete effort which needs a regional cooperation. So one hand I was saying this morning that ISIS should not be seen as a menace, because this is a phenomenon that is actually bringing Bangladesh, India, and Pakistan together, which was missing for a long time. So ISIS as an instrument, I should give them some credit to bring some sort of sense and sensibility in the functioning of the countries of Bangladesh and Pakistan. Thank you. I survived.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Fatma Ceren Yazgan. I'm the Deputy Director General for Security and Intelligence at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs here. It's very close by, and today we're working. And because of that, we're working today. All my colleagues are in the office. And for some 3.5 years since I've been in the office, we've been working more than 60 hours a week. And we have, as far as we're concerned, completed our radicalization process in the ministry against terrorism or political violence or countering crimes. And you can understand how this process goes. First, it is about frustration. It's about frustration that you are facing an injustice, that nobody understands you, not in your family, not in your society. And by the way, everybody has an idea about what you should do, how you should do, and actually they don't know anything. This is frustration. Second, it's about revenge. You think about the 100 years, in some cases it's about 100 years stories, mythologies that they build their revenge on. And then they move from there, and then they relate this to a trigger event where a policeman or a woman, and sometimes poke them, or warn them, or even maybe not themselves, but something happened to their friend, a family member. They are angry. These angry people are mostly, yes, from 15 to 30s. It's a huge, wide gap of wide demography that we're looking at. And from what we see from the recent foreign terrorist fighters epidemia, we're talking about more than 120 countries. So this is not about the NESA, this is not about MENA, this is a global issue. However, there are, for every country and sometimes for every neighborhood, there are different circumstances, dynamics that we should be looking at. So it is a global issue which we should be developing very local responses, very quick reflexes. We should be able to devise policies. They will not be perfect, but we will, this is what most of the countries are doing. We are facing, it's an epidemic. But again, as the speakers before me mentioned, this is not new. It had been going on for a while. Radicalization is not new. Terrorism, political violence is not new. So we should not be behaving or putting ourselves in frameworks where this is so new. Actually, many people in this room, as well as many others who we closely work with, we have the recipes. We have components, 40 plus something components. When they come together, they explode. In every circumstance, different ingredients from that list come together in different combinations, but it works. And ISIL is the new one. We could call it Daesh. We call it actually in Turkish Daesh, because then it doesn't involve the term Islam, the name Islam. Because seriously, whether secular or not, whether considering ourselves in different levels of Muslims, I would say, we all hate to think that these people kidnap the name of our religion, the culture that is behind it. And as again, there are lots of mythologies. Those mythologies are used by these groups and their radicalizers, their ideologues, to attract their foot soldiers. There are more clever of them who climb up in their organizations, who use these mythologies, build on them. Sectarian issue in this region, is it really a problem, or is it a means for proxy war? Social economics, yes. We talk about democracy. Democracy is not about the ballot box. It's a culture. And it develops. And if you don't leave it to develop in its own course, and if you start intervening because of interests or international relations are based on interest, if you play that game in a neo-realistic way, then we interfere with the course of development. It becomes arrested development. And it becomes, and sometimes translates into violence. That's what happened in many countries since the Cold War. And we are now paying what has been actually happening in 1970s and 80s. So this is what are we going to do here now? If we don't take the right steps, in 5-10 years we'll know. It's going to be it's a faster process now. We used to wait, say, a year for grooming and radicalization into organizations. Now it's faster. Yes, they are mobile. They are a mobile generation we're talking about. But you know what? They're not informed. They believe in everything. They are not educated. And it's not a generation only in this region. It's the whole problem of a generation. They believe in the internet sources rather than, they don't know the idea of triangulation, checking their information sources and whatever. They believe. And unfortunately, we see this in Turkey. And we are trying to find ways how to give the real information to these people that they question. These young people question. They can decide what they want to be and believe, but they have to do this knowingly. And actually, anybody here in this room would know, who has a teenager, son or daughter, who had to live through that period, would know that this is hard in individual cases, in families. It's even harder in the greater. These kids are not, men and women actually, they are not being radicalized in mosques. They are radicalized underground. They are radicalized by people who they think they are friends, they are trusted. They don't trust their fathers, uncles, families, their tribe leaders. They want to get free. This is a revolution, and it's an evolution. There is a quote from a book. It says, ISIL Daesh is not a splinter group from the Al-Qaeda, it's an evolution. So we have to read the greater pictures of sociological issues that we have in our societies. And all the way, I mean, as much as I can try, I can't read into the Afghani society today. I can read about that, I can try to live there. But there are codes, cultural codes, and these memories. I can't read it. So it's very valuable that in every society we have, in every government we have experts on this, reading their own societies. It's not my job to tell my Jordanian friends what to do with their country, how to deal with their society. I can't. And in the meantime, when somebody else talks to me about what I should do in Turkey, that's also how I react. Somebody told me that Libya, Daesh, is a problem, and Libyans don't like interference in their affairs by foreigners. And I said, who does? I'm sorry, but none of us. So when we're dealing with issues, we really need to build capacity, and that's what we're doing all here together. And all this, this is why I appreciate the network. This is a network that we're facing that comes to threat, and we should be a network against it. So we should develop local, specific politics coming from local information and wisdom. All of us have wisdom, we just have to look for it. And we have to be honest. I always say there are North London girls coming as foreign terrorist fighters, Istanbul girls coming from religious families. They are not sort of like today's converts. They come from families who are devoted Muslims, but not radicals. We have young boys who are going to technical university here in Ankara. There are a lot of people who are trying to get into that university. Boys from that university going to that. What are they looking for? Sense of what are the purpose? We all have to look into this. It's a problem. But then, radicalization about Daesh is not only about radicalization about Daesh. Radicalization is, as Professor said, it's a culture. It's been going on different levels and different groups. My idea of putting together a study, a radicalization study, is a comparative one. Why does the PKK radicalization, for instance, how does it happen that we have 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds who are ready to die for a, let's say, Marxist-Leninist group? They don't even understand the books when written by them. It's the same thing for the boy who goes to Daesh. It's the same thing for the DHKPC, the left revolutionaries. There's a process of radicalization which works every time. In Europe, I think this is a parallel to the right extremism. Europe majority culture is what? The Anglo-Saxon, Judeo-Christian, this is called the white culture and everything. And then you have the extremists of that coming in from that culture. Despite the Second World War, which was all about this, there are still nodules of right-wing extremism, xenophobic moves, that are actually feeding into the other extremism. So, extremism, radicalization is part of every society. It's virus. It will wait for the less immune moments of our times. And we are, unfortunately, in international relations wise, we are in a very weak era. I was talking to colleagues. I said, this reminds me of pre-World War I, where conflicts are not being managed wisely, and we seem to take measures that are only saving the day with very domestic political strategies. So I think there are, as the General said, yes, we have to end the conflicts. But root causes are something dynamic. So when you think this is the problem and you address it, the genie will not put back in the bottle. This is about counterterrorism and political violence. Once the genie is out of the bottle, you will have to find different solutions and different bottles. One bottle will not be enough again. It never goes into the same bottle. It's very dynamic. So today, let me give you the example of PKK and finish. The PKK, the Kurdish, they say Kurdish, and I never say Kurdish because there are many Kurds in Turkey who are not supporting PKK, who can share the idea of PKK, but they will not endorse the tactics. That's the difference. So a Salafi whose ideas are not totally in line with mine, shall I be calling him extremist, radical? I surely don't share his point of view, but I can't call him a radical, just like that. And again, I wanted to turn back to my PKK example. When PKK came, it was 1980s, it was after the military coup in Turkey, there was less democracy. And with that less democracy, less narrowed human rights and all that dynamics, we have faced increasing political violence. And military coup was done to end political violence of 1970s between right and left, when in Ankara, in the streets of Ankara, young people were killing each other because of right and left rift. So in the end, in 1984, when the first attack by the PKK happened, yes, the Kurdish language was not freely spoken in the public arena, while it was, of course, freely spoken in the families and so on. So there are a lot of problems with individual rights and freedoms, but for everyone, not only for the Kurds, but the Turks as well. And gradually, when we found our democracy back again, particularly in this past 15 years, so we can now see Kurdish media and everything. I'm finishing. But you see, the terrorist group that defects will not stop terrorism because now there's Kurdish TV, or they won't stop terrorism because there will be other, say, concessions because they want. Because it's about social dynamics. I will refer to Della Porta and other researchers who are talking about groups as sociology. So yes, there are pull factors, push factors. There are certain things we can do in our house, particularly for instance, Sunnite alienation in Iraq. Yes, it's a problem. We have been warning it's a problem since the first days of Maliki, but the thing is, when we do things now, we try to put them in order, as it were, it won't be an answer. We have to be very creative, very perceptive, and very insightful if we are to prevent further radicalization and heavier issues coming up in the coming 5 to 10 years. Because, again, we are paying now for the past mistakes. And instead of discussing the past mistakes, I'll suggest we look forward and see what we should do right now. So, that is a summary of what I put together in front of such a group of eminent experts, prominent experts, and this wasn't very diplomatic. I'm an accidental diplomat, so I apologize for entering myself.
Thank you, very interesting, for perspectives. And just to put more points on the table, at NESA we hold a lot of seminars, and we, or at least myself, we were surprised that some people claim, as the General mentioned, that United States created ISIS. First time I heard it, I thought this is joke, somebody making joke, but it was not joke. And what I understand, some people claim that US created ISIS to divide the Middle East and control the region. Many people, including myself, believe there is absolutely no truth in this. United States is the largest economy in the world. Stable and prosper Middle East is in the best interest of the United States. Second point I want to make, which is very controversial, President Obama makes the point that the fear of ISIS is exaggerated. He, to some extent, claims the American media that they overplay the fear of ISIS. Some Americans agree and some Americans do not agree with him. The last point,
that is too simplified a statement or judgment. Actually, so far as I know, Afghanistan government has a very complicated policy toward Taliban. Something like reconciliation, rehabilitation, something like that. But by doing that, actually, I think that Afghanistan government is also think that Taliban is a very complicated entity or a political organization. In this regard, I think China's position regarding Taliban is also very complicated. And if you judge something just as a friend, an enemy, it is too simplified. But usually, they are just between. So I think it is very simplified statements about judgment about Chinese policies about Taliban. Thank you.
okay. He has a microphone.
Thank you for each one of you for an excellent presentation. We could have more information if you have plenty of time. Anyway, my question is, what is the urgent measures should be taken to combat the so-called ISIS? You've been talking about information about establishing ISIS, what they are doing, what is the solution? What is the measures should be taken to complete ISIS? Thank you.
Would you give the microphone to the lieutenant? You have to be a radical and grab the...
I am Mohammad from Pakistan, Islamabad Policy Research Institute. I want to clarify certain points given out by the young Afghan speaker, Halimullah. He has very conveniently at this stage of things going on, he has conveniently blamed Pakistan for everything happening in Afghanistan. That is very.
I think
let me first complete my. Now, he has forgotten, he doesn't know that Pakistan is still non-NATO ally of the Allied forces. Pakistan acted as the front-line state in war against terror being fought in Afghanistan, and it has suffered more than 60,000 casualties, more than any other country in the world. And it has suffered economic losses of more than $100 billion out of this war. And Pakistan has been, you know, that front-line state in your war against Soviets in 80s. And all of your leaders, Afghan leaders who are speaking against Pakistan, including yourself, have stayed in Pakistan and got their education there. Their families have stayed in Pakistan, and Pakistan has been the mainstay of all the Afghan people. Even nowadays, most of the Afghan leaders who are in the government, their families are still in Pakistan, you will agree. And then, now you said that the Pakistani Taliban, they are the main reason. Now, if Pakistan had to support Taliban, then there was no need for Pakistan to become non-NATO ally and to suffer so many casualties and so many other losses. Now the question is regarding the Taliban as leaders of the ISIS. They are Pakistani Taliban. Why Afghanistan has given them refuse to stay in your country if they are leaders there? They are your Taliban, which are at the moment controlling more than 1/3 area of Afghanistan. Right from the beginning, Taliban were controlling some area of Afghanistan, even during ISIS forces. Now, should they stay in Afghanistan in their own area, or they should stay in Pakistan? It is a very simple question. Then at this stage, Pakistan is the country which is trying its best to achieve peace in Afghanistan. And we understand that both countries can only economically progress and get out of this rut. Afghanistan people have suffered, Pakistan realizes that has suffered for more than 35-40 years now. And you must also realize that Pakistan is now very sincere in making efforts for peace in Afghanistan. And you are blaming at a very strange stage. Once we have to get together to make peace. And we are trying for that. Please talk based on facts. Your speech is based on misperception, I should say. All your speech is based on misperception without any viable proof, evidence.
Thank you very much.
So that is my point. I wanted to clarify being Pakistan position before this word gathering. That was very important.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming this time.
We appreciate it very much, and I believe it is important that whatever is said here should not be taken as criticism of any country. I believe the fact that ISIS, Daesh is still there shows that all of us have a lot of work to do. With this, I suggest each speaker gets 30 seconds. 30 seconds, and I will turn the microphone off so we can give up time before the last leaves.
Okay, thank you, sir. I think there was a misunderstanding. There was a misunderstanding. I did not blame Pakistan for ISIS. For you to regret your remarks, I have to tell you, ISIS in Afghanistan and Pakistan border is as much a threat to Afghanistan as it is to Pakistan. Just one fact I have to clear is, Hafiz Saeed is a former member of TGP. He was commander of Khyber, Moman. He's Pakistan. Gul Zaman is Pakistan. Shahid, who was a spokesman of TGP, is a Pakistani, that's why. Second, now we admit that, right? Second, our point is that TGP is the only group among Pakistan and Taliban that is a threat to Pakistan.
Let me reply. I have the right to reply. Now the question is that he says that ISI is the problem of Pakistan, also it is in Afghanistan. We realize this thing. That is why we never want ISI in our own area, near Pakistan, in any country. So, in Pakistan, they have no scope. I tell you very frankly, I assure you that in Pakistan, ISI has no place, one thing. Second thing is that as far as you see that now the American General McChrystal in his report to the Senate and former Defense Secretary Mr. Hagel, they blamed Afghanistan that Afghanistan area is being used by India to create problems for Pakistan in Balochistan. That is a proof. Maulvi Fazlullah is now staying in Afghanistan. You will agree, you have given him refuge. You are not handing him over back to us. Pakistan apprehended 500 Taliban in the initial stages of war and afterwards and handed over to the US. US knows. You say that we were supporting Taliban. We were in fact after the Taliban hand over to the United States. So Pakistan has given sacrifices to fight this war to this end, so that ISAF forces have gone out after getting achieving their mission, that is to break the backbone of the terrorists with the help of Pakistan. Pakistan army doing the action in the North Pakistan, that is the last stage. And all the terrorists we have, irrespective of what group it belongs to,
I apologize.
Killed all of them, and they all ran away to Afghanistan, Europe, and
thank you, sir.
no, you know, they will never come back. We will not allow them to come back.
Thank you, sir.
That is the achievement of Pakistan. I want to tell the whole representatives.
I would like to take my time and respond in 29 seconds to the two questions that were posed. To our Russian colleague, I would simply say that senior leadership doesn't have to leave. I mean, we don't really need to even worry about that because they already have offshoots in different places. I worry about Daesh ideology, and this ideology will remain with us for some time to come. That's why I said long-term solutions are much more important than short-term hard security and military solutions. Unless and until we have a holistic approach that takes us long-term, where you go to educational systems, where you go to social security systems, where you go to political reforms and all. Of course, each country has its own characteristics and it's different in terms of what suits that specific country. What applies in country X may not apply in country Y in terms of, you know, but it's the ideology that we need to worry about, and it's the counter-narrative that is really the solution, even the counter-ideology, longer term. That's the most important. But realistically, of course, if they're defeated, they will seek some other places to go to. They will definitely go somewhere else. But they already have leadership. I mean, the Sinai organization, they have their own leadership. Boko Haram, they have their own leadership. Now, on what measures? My Jordanian friend and colleague, I mean, it's simple. Short term, we're talking about, they have to be defeated in the battlefield. Active organizations like Daesh, Nusra, I mean, these organizations have to be defeated. There's no other choice. But again, we have to worry about long-term, mid-term, long-term countermeasures. And cooperation. By the way, no country in which one can defeat such a threat by itself, unless and until we have real international cooperation and supporting countries that are mostly affected. I don't think we can get anywhere. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I have two solutions that I can propose from South Asian perspective. One is there needs to be a constructive dialogue and engagement between South Asian countries and the Gulf states, particularly on this issue, which is still missing. That will certainly bring some sort of exchange of ideas, and obviously we can then collaborate together. And information sharing will be another issue. And obviously this is an Arab problem, and this cannot be solved by the foreigners, not by the South Asians, or neither by the Russians or the Americans. So therefore the Arabs has to come together. They have to be together to fight it, rather than solely relying on external institutions and countries. And obviously you have to understand that along with the physical presence of ISIS, there is also a virtual presence of ISIS. So the problem is in both the fields. So there is a need to have a coordinated effort to make sure that both the sides are addressed properly. Thank you.
Thank you. The Coalition Against Anti-ISIL have working groups that are actually addressing all these issues. It's multifaceted as any issue. I completely agree. Active organization, you have to beat them in the field, and in the meantime, make sure that there won't be follow-ups to it, new evolutionary, new versions of ISIL. Ideology is important, grievances is important, firstly you don't create new grievances, you address the existing ones, but good. You provide services, good governance. So whatever it takes, we know this again, it writes in the books, many written by yours maybe. So we know it. The answer is about the policy. We want the politicians should be ready to pay the price of the security. Without political cost, there is no solution. On the third question, look, in Russia you had the example, in the North Caucasus, there had been a lot of decapitation of leaders for the terrorist emirates, the Kafkas emirate, right? And so decapitation of leaders is, for instance, one of the ways how terrorism ends. The leaders will probably be gone. What's important is we should make sure that there will be no leaders coming replacing them. Daesh, as we know it today, Zarqawi, who followed after that, Baghdad, who knew about Baghdadi 10 years ago, 5 years ago, okay? So these organizations are sociological, political beings. They have to be treated and analyzed as one. Where will they go? Again, they have spread it. The cancer has already gone through the metastasis. But we should not talk about Daesh per se. It's about the capability. It's neo-anarchism. You go back into the anarchist area of 19th century. This is pretty much what's going on in a bigger and faster scale, with more explosives and more means, planes. It's a more complex environment, but this is what's going on. So Russia is one of the countries who know this threat very well. It has been living through this very well. Turkey has been living this through very well. There have been all these countries around us here. That's why we are here today, by the way. Is there anyone from Iceland here? No? Well, what a surprise. So we are living these threats every day. We have lived with this. Where will they go? It's not important. They'll be killed wherever they go. They'll be hunted down and killed. That's it. Okay?
Thank you very much. And the bus will be there in 10 minutes. So please try to be on time. And before we leave, please thank you.